Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Farm, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York, Kaustubha Das. Welcome to our show. Welcome to the Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam is a spiritual GPS. It's ancient literature from India meant to direct the lives of the misdirected souls. We're souls. We're all souls. We don't have a soul. We are souls. And we just get confused by the material energy. It tempts us with attractive, glittery glass, right? You're running for a jewel. You think it's a jewel out in the sand. You dive for it. And it's a piece of broken glass. I slice up my hands with that broken glass. And the Bhagavatam says again and again, listen, you got a handful of diamonds here. You're throwing them away and chasing broken glass. Don't be so silly. What's the diamond? The diamond is, you don't have to go anywhere to find your identity, to find truth. It all lies within you. You just need to download the secret bundles. The Srimad Bhagavatam is that bundle of spiritual information that helps you find your pleasure from deeply within. You don't have to join a church. You don't have to join a mosque. You don't have to join an ashram. You know what you have to do? You have to look deeply inside yourself. You have to get into a meditative state, and you have to hang out with people who are also on this spiritual path. And then all of a sudden, we stop going outside to find our identity, but we find our identity from within. And these are the ancient teachings of the Vedas, and they're the most relevant teachings today. Because for years and decades, I've worn different costumes. I've got tattoos. I've shaved my head. I got a mohawk. I've tried on different personas and bravados and personalities to try to find where I belong. Guess what? You already belong. You're already valid. You're already connected. We don't have to be converted. We already are spiritual beings. We just forgot. And so the process of yoga is a reawakening of what our identity is. What do you think about that, Kaustubha?
I'm thinking I would like to see photographs of you with the mohawk. Do you have any of those?
They're around. They're around. It's not pretty. I wanted so bad to have one of those real, what did they call them in the old days? One of those real big, pointy, straight ones, but I had curly hair. So my mohawk always looked poor. It was like a C-rate mohawk.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, thank you for sharing those opening thoughts.
Thank you. Steady Kaustubha, we call him. He's steady right in the middle.
Am I?
Folk, not worried about the waves of happiness and distress. Everybody's going through waves right now, Kaustubha. Everybody.
They come and they go. Yeah, I know that. I see that.
People are in so much pain. I want to delete everything. I just want to talk to you guys. The only people I want to talk to.
Got to ride this out.
I know. Are you sure it ends on July 25th with the astrology? We're going by astrological.
There's an eclipse.
Right now. Everybody hates each other. Everybody hates each other. That's what I'm finding.
There's an eclipse. I don't think everybody hates each other, but there's tension. There's tension is increased. But there's an eclipse this Sunday, and then there's, I think, the third in a row is, I think, July 5th.
If you missed the other show, eclipses, according to the Vedic perspective, are inauspicious. They're not good. In America, we lay on a field and the eclipse, let's lay on a field and watch. In India, they're diving into the Ganges, trying to hide from the eclipse because it has this inauspicious effect. So we bathe in sacred. What are you going to do during the eclipse? Do you do anything special during eclipses?
No, I don't. But this time I make a little careful.
Yeah,
because the world is so.
I'm going to lock myself in the closet and chant, I think.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Let's just, we're going to read Bhagavatam. But this eclipse, we're going to be interviewing Yogi Charu this Sunday.
See, this is the thing about bhakti too. Bhakti is above astrological configurations, and that's why you, my friend, are so steady within this, because you're deeply absorbed in bhakti.
I'm trying.
And because I have material attachments and I have material desires, and I'm basically a materialist at heart,
Come on.
I suffer in the waves. I suffer in the waves. And every time I feel like myself suffering in those waves, a red flag goes up. You're not taking shelter. Anytime I'm feeling that anxiety, that stress, that fear, whatever, that anger, I should understand I'm doing something wrong. I'm doing something wrong. I'm not taking shelter. So I feel fortunate that I have this lifeline of bhakti. It's sort of like the law books, the gold standard of proper thoughts and behaviors in a very confusing world. And we fall short, but you know what? We're asking everyone to jump very high.
Mhm.
So we're trying. We're dented cans. We're
Okay.
works in progress. Forgive us.
But bhakti will make that, as we mentioned the other day, the inauspicious, it makes it auspicious.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a
So
blessing.
No
of
matter
bhakti.
what's happening astrologically, I still want to be practicing bhakti. I still want to be absorbing my mind in Bhagavatam. I still want to be embracing those teachings, treating people well, respecting others, being kind to others, and absorbing my mind in these deeper spiritual sources of transformation. So whether it's going to be an eclipse or whether there's not, or whether there's going to be, through all that we do that. And then when those, difficult times in life come up, we just keep doing the same. But maybe we're a little particularly attentive right now, that if we're getting discouraged, if we're getting disturbed, angry, or feeling distraught, then understand that, there's the waves and they come and they go, and, it'll let go for a while. It'll come back later.
Yeah. Yeah. If you ever go to these astrologers, but I mean, this is super popular in India. You see this a lot. A lot of men, their hands are covered in jewels, right?
Yeah.
Because they get their charts done. Everybody does in India. It's not a brand. You get your chart done, and what happens is you have some weak planet, some malefic planet, and so you buy a jewel, and it counteracts a malefic planet. It's such an interesting thing. And in Bhakti, we're sort of like, we accept the potency of some of these astrological configurations and how it can affect us in the same way the moon affects us. But we ultimately accept that, you know what? Whatever I got. And Krishna is going to give me that as a gift, because I'm connected to Krishna, to God, that whatever I got, even even an astrological stormy day, what to speak of a hurricane, this is somehow a blessing for me. And truthfully, that's the only way we're going to make it through super hard times, is to understand that everything is in divine hands. My life is in divine hands. And I'm going to see how this reversal is going to lift me up. That I'm not neglected. I'm not forgotten. Krishna is not sending me an out of the office, reply. Krishna is there, actually. And those downturns have made me rise higher in the bigger picture. Sometimes I got to zoom out to really see that.
So we got to do sometimes. You got to change the perspective. Bhagavatam helps do that. Right?
Bhagavatam helps do that. And we are in a place where in the purports, they're telling all these great stories. The Bhagavatam is filled with these fantastic stories of great archetypes, heroes, sages, evil kings, witches. We might even get to a witch today.
And the occasional snake person.
Occasional reptilian and shapeshifter. We might get to that as well. But they're peppered with deep philosophical and very relevant truth. Some people like fantastic stories. Some people hate fantastic stories and just want deep philosophical truths. This has a great balance of both. So let's dive into this.
All right.
Shall we?
Yep.
Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayamudiraye. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances to the personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayeshva badreshu nityam bhagavat sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes in the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service to the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Jnana Tamarandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chaksurun Medatam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So we are reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 15, Text 8. We're going to go back and finish Text 8 because Kaustubha was in the middle of telling this interesting story about the burning of the Kandava forest. Now, this is from the Mahabharata. Mahabharata, if you don't know, I heard they're thinking about changing India's. You know how everybody's going back to the original. What's the original? What's the original?
Yeah.
And they're trying to change. They're trying to change India back to Bharat. Did you hear that?
I did hear mention of that. Certainly, you know, they've already done it with many cities in India, so maybe
Right.
they're going to do it with the country.
Yeah. Yeah. Within very short years, Mumbai got changed, Bombay to Mumbai, and Allahabad to Prayagraj. I wonder if they do it with Delhi.
They did it with Calcutta. They did so many cities.
Yeah. Because basically they were just changed by the invaders. Invaders changed their names. Okay.
Change it back.
I'm changing it back. Okay. So you want to finish? You want to give a little brief intro to that
verse
story
again? Why don't we read that verse again?
Okay.
Which was verse number 8.
Because he was near to me, it was possible for me to conquer with great dexterity the powerful king of heaven, Indradev, along with his demigod associates, and thus the fire god, to devastate the Kandava forest. And only by his grace was the demon named Maya saved from the blazing Kandava forest, and thus we could build our assembly house of wonderful architectural workmanship, where all the princes assembled during the performance of the Rajasuya Yagya and paid you tributes. Now Kaustubha is going to decipher. Most of the people reading this are like, what? If you didn't know the backstory to this, it is completely confusing, this verse. Kaustubha, please explain.
Well, we began the story yesterday, right? So what's happening right now is, again, that this is the winding up of the lives of the Pandavas here. And Yudhishthira, the king, is seeing all these inauspicious omens mentioned in the last chapter. He was intuiting that the end was coming, that Krishna had left, that Krishna had winded up his earthly pastimes and was no longer present. So he was, he sees, then Arjuna comes, and he's seeing how dejected Arjuna looks. And Arjuna was coming from Dwarka, which is where Krishna's from. And seeing the face of Arjuna, he understood something's very wrong. And now Arjuna is beginning to say, it is, you were right, it's because Krishna's left. And now Arjuna is, he's going back in his mind and recognizing all of the opulences that they had, all of the power that they had, as well as, that all came from Krishna, as well as like how Krishna stepped in and saved them in so many difficult circumstances. So he, just as we all should feel, he was feeling that sense of gratitude to God for everything. And one interesting thing that's coming through here is that he's not, he was a powerful man, right? He was a person that was not only physically powerful, but he had a whole history of incredible achievements, but here we see that he has this gratitude and the humility of a Bhakti-yogi, that he doesn't claim it for himself. He sees it all as God-giving. Who am I? I'm insignificant. But look at all of the things that he did for us. So we're getting a bit of a rundown of some of the intimate times that Arjuna shared with Krishna. And one of them was this time where they went to the river together and spent some time. And as they were walking along the river, they were approached by, I mentioned some of this yesterday, they were approached by this Brahmana, very unique looking Brahmana, fiery looking Brahmana. And Arjuna said to him, what can we do for you? And he explained that that he was Agni, the god of fire, that he had been instructed that for his well-being, he needed to devour this forest, the Khandava forest. And but Indra, the god of rain, was making it difficult. Now, why was Indra making it difficult? Because the snake person, Takshaka.
I'm not going to say anything. Just
right. There was a snake, and that snake will play an important role later in Bhagavatam. But he was living in that forest, and somehow he had a relationship with Indra, the king of heaven. And so every time Agni would try to devour that forest, he would pour down the rain to make it difficult. So he came to Arjuna and he said, could you please stand up to Indra and fight him off and allow me to devour this forest? Now that's quite a challenge, right? Indra, what is Indra's weapon? Mara.
Get her.
Thunderbolt?
Thunderbolt,
Yep.
yes. So that, Thunderbolt's so powerful, right? And Indra's got like these incredible thunderbolts, and he's just like, he's a god. No human being should be able to stand up to him. But Arjuna says, I can do this, but I'll need certain things from you. I'll need a chariot and horses that could run as swift as the wind. And I'll need the proper bow to fight him. And he's also given this inexhaustible quiver of arrows. And so he receives all of these. I think that's where we stopped yesterday, right? He was given all of these
Gifts,
benedictions, which are benedictions that would help him in the future, right? When he had to fight the battle of Kurukshetra. They all became very important. And I believe in even that chariot, right? Isn't it that after the battle that Arjuna steps off the chariot and the thing just like goes up in flames, because Krishna's like, I was maintaining you that whole time.
The chariot was destroyed years, months ago, or not months ago, but
it had endured far more than it could endure, but somehow Krishna maintained
because there was Krishna and the devotee. That's what kept it, and the idea behind because Hanuman. So Hanuman jumped off the flag. Hanuman jumped off the flag. Yeah. And then Krishna got off, and then Arjuna got off, and the whole thing went up in flames.
Yeah. So now he has these weapons, and he said, so he says, go ahead, eat the forest. And as he does, then Indra appears to as he had in the past, and then Arjuna had to stand and fight Indra, and he had to stand and fight. He and Krishna had to stand there and fight hordes of heavenly powerful beings that came to try to stop it. And so just like when two friends, they have to, guys, when they fight together, it's a bond, right? You see like all these these guys that went through wars together. There's a kind of bond that takes place when two people go through something very difficult together. And that bond was built there between Krishna and Arjuna, even tighter, even stronger when they went through these things together. And so Arjuna is looking back, remembering that. But they stood and they fought off Indra, and they fought off all these celestial beings. But out of that forest came one character who was living in that forest. And he was about to be burned up in that forest. And he took shelter of Arjuna, and his name was Mayadanava. And so Mayadanava was
an architect by trade.
He was an architect, no ordinary architect, but he was like a celestial kind of architect, right? An architect on a whole nother level. And generally, he was kind of like hired by the darker people of the universe, the Asuras, yeah. But he out of appreciation, he surrendered to Arjuna. Arjuna was like, oh, what can I? They fight them off. The forest is consumed, and Mayadanava, having been protected, says to Arjuna, tell me anything that you want. I will, I'll try to return this favor. Arjuna said, oh, there's nothing that I want. No, please, I ask of you, well, if you want to please me, then just do something for Krishna, right? That's all that I'm looking for. If you can do something for Krishna, I'll be happy. And Krishna says the same thing. No, if you do something for Arjuna, So then insisting that he accepts something, then Arjuna says, well, then do something for Yudhishthira. Please design a palace for Yudhishthira that'll just like beyond compare. And so that's what they're talking about here when he says, and only by his grace was the demon named Maya saved from the blazing Kundava forest. And thus we could build our assembly house of wonderful architectural workmanship, where all the princes assembled during the performance of Rajasuya Yagna and paid you tributes. Right? So anyway, that's something about that story. But again, what we really take from this, if you really want to get down to it, right? All of this, all the stories in Bhagavatam about Krishna's life and all these, things that people categorize as Hindu mythology and, far out stories about, so many far out stories. If you really want to understand what they're all about, they'll have meanings on many different levels. There may be, a moral teaching that's there. There may be a teaching in regards to, social ideas. There may be, teachings regarding spiritual practice, But if you get down to the deepest essence of it all, it's always about the love shared between Krishna and the devotee of Krishna. That's going to be the deepest meaning that you'll always find it there. If you're trying to understand what is this all about, that's where you're meant to go, right? Why is Sita banished by Ram? That's the only way you'll understand is by going there. Why is Krishna dancing on the serpent Kaliya, another snake person?
Maybe the message is just absorb yourself in the paranormal. Are you sure?
No.
Are you sure it's about loving devotional service between Radha and Krishna and the
even
the
when the
devotees?
paranormal stuff comes up, you have to understand that this is where it goes. This is where it's meant to be. So what's happening is Arjuna's just opened up his heart. He's going, through loss, right? But his mourning is this deep absorption in his love for Krishna and the Krishna that love shared with him. And so when he shares this, it's like, he was my best friend. We went through so much together. We were so close going through all together. He was so kind to us, and his mourning and his going back in his mind, which generally is not the business of the yogi, right? Generally the business of the yogi is to be in the present, not to go back and reminisce. But as a bhakti yogi, his reminiscing about his connection with God was all completely, it was like the deepest type of yoga, was the deepest absorption. And now his heart is deeply absorbed in memories of his gratitude for Krishna. It's a mixture of pain and love, right? And gratitude blended into unique flavor that he's experiencing at this moment.
That's beautiful.
All right.
Very lucid this morning, Kaustubha.
Oh, no.
Very lucid.
Being too kind to me, Raghunath. You're inspiring me.
Just hang out with me for a while. That illusion will be shattered.
Text 9.
Text 9. All right. This is going to get good. Your respectable younger brother, who possesses the strength of 10,000 elephants, killed by his grace Jarasandha, whose feet were worshipped by many kings. These kings have been brought for sacrifice in Jarasandha's Mahabhairava Yagya, but they were thus released. Later, they paid tribute to your majesty. Want me to tell that story?
Well, that story is about, there's this king Jarasandha who was he was very powerful. So much so that he had, we can understand that what is now India and even this kingdom was kind of like, or these kingdoms were beyond that, like into what is now Afghanistan and Pakistan. And I'd imagine, the other northeastern borders, that there was this larger area.
Burma, Thailand.
Yeah. Yeah, certainly that culture.
Indonesia.
Certainly you see that culture still present to this day in those areas. The remnants, even over in where is it in where is the, why can't I think of it?
Cambodia.
In Cambodia, right? What is it? What is the
Angkor Wat.
Angkor Wat, right? So even over there, we see the Vishnu temples and so on.
Central Vietnam, Probo says.
Yeah.
Yeah, Vietnam, all that.
So these kingdoms are all run by different kings, but Yudhishthira became like the king of the kings, right? He became the emperor of them all. But this Jarasandha was very powerful, and he had captured all these kings, so many kings, by his power. They were all very powerful. He managed to capture them, and he was going to sacrifice them in some kind of dark, tantric kind of sacrifice.
Yeah, there's this fierce form of Shiva called Mahabhairava.
Yeah.
Where I don't know if this is real ritual, but it was a really type of black magic type of thing where he was going to capture, after defeating an army, capture the kings, put them in what Prabhupada called a concentration camp. Did you read that in the purport? A concentration camp. And then was going to offer their heads to Shiva to develop mystical powers and to please Shiva. Yeah. And it was quite gruesome.
So this wrong had to be righted. And also it was kind of part of establishing Yudhishthira as that emperor, right? That all the kings kind of accept him, or you could say submit or accept him in that role. And Jarasandha was kind of like the big obstacle in the way of that. And it was not easy to defeat. So what they did was that Arjuna, his brother Bhima, and Krishna all disguised themselves.
More disguises.
Yes.
The Mahabharata Vedic culture is filled with disguises.
You like that, don't you?
I love it.
So what did they disguise themselves? This one is a quiz for you, Raghunath. There's a Sanskrit term rarely used, but they disguise themselves as something. I can see.
Are they disguised themselves as Brahmins?
Yes, Brahmanas, but Brahmanas. I'll give you a good strong hint, but Brahmanas at a certain stage of life.
Sannyasis? Brahmins? No, I don't know.
The term is snataka.
Oh, snatakas.
Yes.
Yeah. What are snatakas?
It's not because generally
I remember snataka being mentioned, but I never knew what it was.
So generally, generally there are these 4 stages of life that you're in that Vedic paradigm, right? There's the celibate student life.
Yeah.
Then there's the grihastha, or the married life. And then there's retired life, and ultimately like the renounced life. But in between, just like when you're a brahmachari, or the celibate monk student, that first stage in life, you're not thinking about marriage. You're engaged in that, and you're absorbing and so on. And then married life is the next stage. But in between, there's some time where you're like a bachelor, right? Where you're like no longer like a monk in an ashram, being trained up as a brahmachari student. Now you're kind of like looking to get married.
That's what snataka is?
Yes. Yeah, that's the snataka. So you're kind of in between those 2 stages there. That's the snataka.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well,
So I guess,
by the way, you're missing the backstory here to make the story make sense.
well, if you want to go back, you want to tell about all the battles that were fought?
Well, no. How Bhima's going to defeat Jarasandha.
Yeah.
But how does he defeat Jarasandha? It's a very peculiar way that he defeats Jarasandha.
Why don't you fill us in on that?
Well, Jarasandha's father was
we could have told that later, right? But if you want to tell it now, go ahead. Let me just tell a little bit more, and then you tell that, right? Okay. So they dressed up as these snatakas. I assume that status of life must have been demonstrated in something of how you dressed yourself, right?
Something.
Yeah. What exactly was, I don't know. Like when you're married, you like in our culture, you have a ring, Something was indicating that they were snatakas. I don't know what it was.
Snataka hat.
And so they were welcomed into the home because they were dressed as brahmanas. Jarasandha was a warrior. So
and he was cultured.
He was, even though he was dark, he still respected that culture and that etiquette and all of that. he even recognized, the power comes through that, through following that. Your power decreases when you ignore that. So he was careful to follow all that. He welcomed Arjuna and Krishna and Bhima into his home as if they were brahmanas. But he said straight out to them, I see right through your disguise.
He's like, who are these Brahmins? I mean, Brahmins are supposed to be renounced, austere, and these guys are all like these hulks coming in there with like scars on their shoulder from carrying heavy bows, and battle scars. They look like massive kings and warriors, but they're dressed like in obvious disguise, and he sees right through it.
And he had fought Krishna many times, actually. Krishna defeated him many times, right?
Yes.
And so he knew Krishna.
times.
And Krishna's like, you can't disguise his beauty. It's like he's, so he knew who this was. And he said he knew who it was. But he still treated them as if they were brahmanas and said, what have you come here for? How can I serve you, like that? And so is it at that point that they said, well, we've come to fight you or something?
Yeah, we're not coming here to beg food grains like ordinary Brahmins would. We're actually here to beg a duel.
Right.
And they wanted to get, we wanted a challenge to a duel. He goes, I am your old enemy, Krishna, and this is the son of Kunti. These are the sons of Kunti, Bhima, and Arjuna. And then Jarasandha laughed in their face. Oh, Krishna, I'm not going to fight you. You're a total coward. And Arjuna's too young. But this one person, Bhima, he's a worthwhile fight. Like, he didn't want to win the fight. He actually wanted a fair fight. He says, but this one guy, Bhima, I'll fight this guy. Now, Bhima's the strongest of all the Pandavas.
Now, of course, that's a way of insulting someone too, right? You're not worthy for me to fight. And you're not.
You're just a kid.
And it's so funny in Krishna's case, if you look at this, right? Sometimes life is so absurd, right? Sometimes we get put in these positions where it's just like, we feel like we're right and nobody recognizes this, and this is just ridiculous, and I'm going to say what I have to say. But even like Krishna defeated, how many times? Was it 21 times?
14 times.
14 times? 14 times he defeated Jarasandha. Jarasandha would raise another army, and Krishna single-handedly would fight Jarasandha in his army and defeat them all. And he did it 14 times. And then one
time he wanted to run away.
Krishna left the battlefield.
Yeah.
Right. And Jarasandha is like, you coward, you can't. And he was just being ridiculous. It's just like, Krishna's like, how many times do I have to do this?
And by the way, there's an interesting story because all of Gujarat, everybody in Gujarat's devotees, and they all worship this form of Krishna as the coward. Not cowherd.
Ranchor.
The coward. Because Krishna did this pastime of like, I don't want to fight. And so he ran from the battlefield. And Krishna, even when he
actually walked from the battlefield, but he couldn't catch him somehow, right?
And so even Krishna, all of his pastimes are glorified, even when he's sort of like doesn't want to fight. And this is called Ranchor Krishna. And this is the main temple in Gujarat.
And so Krishna defeated him so many times, and Jarasandha just hated Krishna. It's like he just couldn't get over him. So like when they challenged him to duel, he's like, "Oh, Krishna, he's a coward. He will." It's absurd that he could make such a claim. And Arjuna, he's too young, and he's just a boy. He can't stand up to me. But Bhima, okay, here's a worthy opponent. And Bhima was just like huge and just like strong and just super powerful. So Bhima now is going to fight Jarasandha. Now they start to fight, and they're just so evenly matched that they're going at each other for a long, long time. And then at the end of the day, when neither of them had defeated the other, they would stop the fight and relate to each other like, okay, you're my guest. Let me treat you like a guest. And they would civilly, coexist.
It was civil warfare.
Yeah.
Back when warfare had like ethics and codes of ethics, like we're going to fight and then fighting time is over. We're going to take a break. We're going to have dinner. We're going to come back and fight you tomorrow.
Yeah. So they go on like that for days. I forget exactly how long.
I think it was 21 days perhaps.
Yeah. And so then,
long fight.
Yudhishthir's, back waiting to hear what will be the result of this. These three have gone on this mission. So much depends on this. Days are going by. So then now, after struggling to defeat Jarasandha and not being able, Bhima gets to the point where it's like, I don't think I can do it. You know, I don't think I can defeat this person. And then Krishna gives him a hint, and now we need the backstory.
All right, here's the backstory. So Jarasandha's father was also a very powerful king, and he wanted to have a child, and he had two queens, and they could not have children. So what do? They go to the forest. There's a common thing. There's this, just like mantras can give you spiritual evolution, mantras can also give you things. That's part of mantra meditation, is you use mantras for things, for stuff, for health, as weapons, as curses. And so it's a whole part of Vedic culture. We don't concentrate on them. We don't talk about them much, but they're there. We know them sometimes. But the Maha Mantra, which we recommend chanting, is to help us get out of our material sphere, not to try to play metaphysical Amazon Prime with the universe to try to get stuff from us, get stuff from God or demigods, but it's really to transcend the body. But this father wanted a king. His father wanted a child. So they went to the forest, they performed austerities, and they've got this, they did these austerities where they somehow got this magical mango. And the word was, you've got to give this mango to your queens, and then they'll get pregnant. So instead of just giving it to one queen, he cut it in half and gave it to both. And guess what? They both gave birth to half a child. And the child was dead. And so they were ghastly. They threw the child in the forest. And in the forest, there was a witch.
Oh, okay.
Here's the witch. The magical mango. I always tell this funny story how we were at this temple. I won't mention the temple, but it's an old temple in Vrindavan. I was with a small handful of students, and I knew one of the young priests from a lineage of priests, and they still do these fertility pujas on a regular basis for people who want to have a baby. And it works. And so he came to me and said, hey, Raghunath, if any of your ladies would like to get pregnant, my brother can help. And I was like, oh man, you don't, all the women were like, what? I was like, you don't even know what that sounded like. But he was so innocent and sweet when he said it. But they do fertility pujas. And me being the cynical New Yorker, I was like, is that really true? Does it really work? And he goes, Prabhu, every time this works. Every time this works. So anyway, these fertility pujas are something that's real. But the second mystic thing was this witch. And when they say witch, they don't necessarily mean for dark forces or the forces of, she
was a yogini.
They're yoginis, and they do say. So she took this two parts of the baby and she joined them, and the baby came to life.
And what was her name?
Her name was Jara. And so she returned the baby to the king and said, listen, here's the baby, but do me a favor, just name it after me. And so he named the baby Jarasandha, joined by Jara. Yes. Now continue the story, Kaustubha.
Okay, so he was two halves joined as one. So somehow there's a seam there.
There's a seam right in the middle.
Sometimes the seams are the weak link in a chain. And so at a certain point, how the Krishna indicated to Bhima
a leaf.
He
picked up a leaf and he split it in half.
Or a blade of grass or something like that.
Yeah, blade of grass. The Mahabharata says like a leaf, but the Krishna book says a blade of grass. They split it right down the center. And Bhima got the idea. So he steps on his foot, grabs the other foot, and rips him in half. And the Mahabharata goes into more detail. Because what happens in the Mahabharata is the two halves somehow, in a very creepy way, wiggle back together and rejoin. And then Bhima looks at Krishna, what do I do now? And Krishna takes another leaf, splits it right down the middle, throws one to the left and throws one to the right. And so Bhima, again, rips him in half and throws the pieces in different directions. And therefore, that is the death of Jarasandha.
So with the death of Jarasandha, that really was the last big obstacle to Yudhishthir's being recognized, is that emperor, right? And it was what really began to stir up the envy of Duryodhana like never before. And then in that palace that was created by Maidanava, which was it was a mystical palace, right?
Sure.
And what was the last thing that really just got under Duryodhana's skin was, he walked
But you
into
got to
the
say the palace was mystical because,
Yeah.
forgive me for interrupting you.
Well, I was going to say it. I'm going to say it with us, but please go ahead.
I'm sorry. I'm
No,
sorry.
I mean,
I'm sorry. Just say
no,
it. Just say
please,
it. Just say
your
it.
speech.
Sorry.
All
Sorry.
right.
I thought you
So
missed it. Thought you missed an important part. Go on.
Part of the mysticism of that palace was that it somehow, could tune into like a person's their heart or their level of consciousness, and certain areas like sometimes what was land, if you didn't have the right sentiments, right, the right sentiments to Yudhishthira and to the Pandavas and so on,
To the owners of the palace.
Yeah.
If you didn't like them, the house would reveal itself differently.
Yeah. So what was land would appear as water. What was water would appear as land. So Duryodhana walks in there and he's like, oh, there's water. He's creeping around it. He's going around in a weird thing as if there's water there, although there's none.
So he's like, Prabhupada calls it, what does it call it in the Christian book? Cutting a, I can't remember. But basically, all there is a patio, but it appears to Duryodhana like a lake, like a fountain or something, a lake with a tiny thin walkway. So he's like trying to balance on this very thin walkway. So if everybody else just saw Duryodhana walking on the patio and just dancing in a peculiar way across the patio, and then when there was no water, or when there was actually water, Duryodhana, because of his envy and hatred towards Yudhishthira, he would see that as, oh, that's land, and he would just walk and fall right into a pond or a fountain, and all the queens would laugh.
So yeah, the Pandavas are there, these cousins that he has so much envy for, and their queens are there, these beautiful saintly women, and Duryodhana falls into the water. How embarrassing, right? And everybody cannot help but laugh. And Yudhishthira, because he's so saintly, even though Duryodhana tried to kill him and his family, he tells everyone, no, don't
laugh. He's our guest. He's our guest.
Yeah. But then Krishna says, no.
It's fun. It's funny.
Everybody
laugh. Even Krishna
Come on, this is
it's so funny how Yudhishthira is more moral apparently than Krishna sometimes.
Because Yudhishthira's morality in this case was on it was on a certain level, but Krishna's morality is on the level of divine love, and he had such love for the Pandavas, and it was also a way of him stirring up the tension that would lead to the Battle of Kurukshetra, which would conclude the purpose of it all, which was to relieve the earth of the burden of all these horrible leaders. So that was playing there. But there's another interesting thing that's kind of revealed through that is that what is humor all about, right? What do we laugh at? And generally we laugh, if we look at almost all humor, like 99.9% of it, like most humor has to do, if you look at it like from, say, a Vedantic, view, it has to do with the material energy making a fool of someone, right? That we have our plan, we have our desires, and then the material energy moves in such a way where we get the exact opposite of it. Duryodhana wants to be respected when he walks in there, right? He's probably dressed just right. And he's walking in there like, proud, like I'm a powerful king. And then he becomes a fool, right? The material energy turns him into a fool. And if we look at humor, just pull up any Seinfeld episode, pull up any, it's about you're turned into a fool. And so if we think about life, our own lives, we can say, am I being made a fool of at every step, right? Is this all a big joke? Are the higher beings just laughing at me because I'm still behaving so foolishly? I still am I'm still trying to play a role that I'm not meant to play. And I'm still attached to playing that role. and the material energy is thwarting that, left and right. And when it gives me just a little bit, I become super proud as if I'm something that I'm not. And then it's taken away from me again. And then, and I don't learn from it, and I go and do the same stupid thing again. It's a big humorous comedy, our lives, until we learn to understand who we really are. And we learn to understand that, that the desires that I have, material desires that I have, that actually they don't give, they don't deliver in the end. I just need to let go of them and regain my dignity, right? Like, without that, I'm just a joke. What do you think about that, Raghunath?
You are getting direct revelation today, Kaustubha.
Well, these are just things I've heard from great souls. That's all. Okay.
I wanted to share something from Krishna book, because we just read this in Sweet Baby Krishna not that long ago, and I thought it was interesting. That story of the kings was really interesting when they got released from the prison of Jarasandha.
Right. So after Jarasandha is defeated, he can release all these kings that were his prisoners that he was going to sacrifice.
Kings in a dungeon.
How many were there?
I can't remember, but there was a gang of kings.
Like 1,008 or something.
Yeah. And when they released, Krishna looked at them, and it was part of Krishna's mission to release those kings. And he went to them, I'm so sorry you went through all this. And one of the kings said, don't feel bad for us, Krishna. Whatever we did to get here was our karma. We must have done something in the past to get us here. Is that an interesting way to look at life?
Yeah.
Like, whatever I got, the guy was being held in a prison. And now it's really easy to blame Jarasandha. It's really easy to blame maybe your army didn't stick up for you, to blame the world. Sometimes we blame the world. Sometimes we blame politics. Sometimes we blame our actual aggressor. They were probably maligned or put into very difficult situations. It just makes me realize how much my complaining in the material worlds makes me suffer, just with little things. But imagine this perspective of whatever I got. And God knows what I've done in my previous life to get this type of pain. Now, what am I going to do with that? Coming to peace with something that's apparently incredibly tragic, to put in a prison, in a dungeon, and get ready to be sacrificed and killed. But coming to peace and accept that this is God's plan. And it's just like a shift. That shifting of the mind creates this mental freedom. That is the real alchemy of the yogi. We just change our mind in such a deep-rooted way. It's so impressive, because even in a month, if me and my wife get in a fight and we go to a therapist, the therapist is going to say, if I'm complaining about bridge, a good therapist is going to say, well, really? Oh, really? Well, what's your responsibility, Raghu? And immediately I'll say, it's not my responsibility. It's all hers. And a good therapist will push you to own responsibility. And in the Vedic paradigm, because that's the only way you're going to find some release from the pain of resentment, is to accept some type of responsibility. So it's hard to do in one sense, unless you understand the eternality of the soul. Because there's a lot of times where I feel like, how the hell am I responsible for this? And this is a big one. It's a tough one, but the soul is eternal. And many, many lives and actions we've done to get us what happened, where we are today. And sometimes I ever have like this, you have a great week, but one of those days was horrible. Or you have a horrible week, but one of those days was great. That is our lifetime eternally. We've had miserable lifetimes. We've had altruistic, loving lifetimes. We've had, somewhere in the middle lifetimes, where if you look back on life at the end of our life, we're like, that was a really tough life. Or if you look back in life, what a great, fortunate life I've had. And by the way, I'm just telling the Vedic paradigm. This is not my take on life. This is just what the Vedas teach. that we are up and down for lifetimes, doing good things, doing miserable things, getting in tough situations. Me and Bridget did the most horrific thing yesterday of trying to save our sheep's life. Why is that horrific? Because the sheep was infested with maggots. It was so gross, I can't even tell, but we might have saved these 2 sheep. But it was a 9-hour process of doing the grossest thing we could ever do. And the sheep were about to die. And I don't even want to get into it. But as I'm doing it, I had to spray this pesticide on the sheep to kill the maggots. This is a gross story. And the maggots were literally jumping out of the sheep. I've never seen anything like this. It was the grossest thing ever. And I thought, I didn't tell Bridget this, but I thought, I'm just killing all these maggots. These maggots are just doing their thing. They just want to live. They just want to have babies. They just want to be happy. And now I'm killing all the maggots. So here I am murdering the maggots to save 1 sheep. And I'm just like thinking, what an existence life is. We are just like, they're getting born and they're dying immediately. The sheep is suffering tremendously, but for the most part, it's been loved and taken care of. These are just like lifetimes, and we're changing bodies really in the big picture of things on a daily basis. All you have to do is walk in a cemetery and realize there was millions of people going through the same thing we've been going through. They died at age 4, died at age 40, died at age 80. So this life is a very, very long time. And so the Vedic psychology here is, well, whatever I got, I must have deserved it because I got it. Nothing happens randomly. There's a cause and effect in this universe. Is this getting too long-winded, or you know where I'm going with this, Kaustubh?
Well, it's 6
Why
o'clock.
don't you encapsulate that? Because I'm just rambling.
But no, I really like your point that the alchemy of a yogi has so much to do with their perspective of their own suffering, right?
Yeah.
How we respond to that. That's our opportunity. That let our sufferings in this world be the serve as a catalyst for our transformation, and how we view it, what we gain from it. You know, that's where the yoga off the mat lies.
There's a lot of power there.
Yeah.
In the shifting of the mind.
Hey, you know, one thing I want to mention, you were talking about mantras, right?
Yeah.
Well, today at 11 a.m., we bring back Dravida for Patreon members.
We're going to learn some mantras.
Yeah, how to learn them, how to memorize them.
11 a.m. Eastern time.
Yeah, with Dravida Das for Patreon members.
Yeah, if you're interested in joining Patreon, we have a great thing going here. It's a whole little party going on Patreon. It's patreon.com/wisdom of the sages. We're giving a lot of classes, yoga classes. Next week we have great teachers. But today especially, if you loved Sunday's class, and if you haven't heard it, I highly recommend listening to it. Dravida is a Sanskrit master. He's going to also be on our Patreon class today. I'm excited for it myself. And we're going to try to get Dravida back again because we had so many positive responses. Thanks for class today, everybody. And Kaustubh, thank you. If you want to join our little Zoom group, you can. You just got to email Mara, wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com. Wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com. Tomorrow's Sleeping Saturday. It's question day. I'm looking forward to it. If you have questions on your spiritual journey, you write them in, you mail them to Mara. She goes through them, picks out the one she likes, throws out the one she doesn't like. Just kidding. And then we try our best. And then Sunday, Yogi Charu is our guest. We're excited for him. He's a great soul. Lots of interesting stories from him. I think you're going to enjoy it. Another sleep-in Sunday. Get to sleep until 8 o'clock. And now is our favorite time of day. It's called lip-syncing transcendental mantras. I want to thank Jiva and everybody involved in our Bhakti recovery program, having our Maya meetings on a regular basis. It's good, and it's growing out of control. It's a great chance for you guys to come together and share what you're going through in confidence in a great circle. Thanks for Jiva and for everybody participating in that.
Connect with that higher power.
With that higher power in the form of a sweet baby blue boy. What else is going on in our online discourses?
Damodar Priya is going to give a cooking class on
There is a
Sunday.
cooking class Sunday with Damodar Priya, a khichdi making class. And she's great. She's a great cook, and you're going to love her. She's on the show with her husband regularly. That is Sunday. What time is that, Mara?
11 a.m. I'm going to post it on Patreon.
Once again, patreon.com/wisdom of the sages. Khichdi's considered the healthiest food. They say something about one pot. I got it. One pot cooking. All doshas. Balances all doshas. Here we go. Hey, Jaya Radhe, Jai Shri Krishna Bolo Jai Radhe.